Hey guys, I've got an exciting video for you today, and it has everything to do with your money. My mission is simple: to help you protect your family and keep more of your money. I'm here to help level the playing field for families and those who seek the truth. There's always a new way to make money, but at the end of the day, it's your family's security and your legacy that matter. And I promise to help you protect what's really important to you. Legacy Money starts now. Here's what's happened just within the last 48 hours. The Federal Reserve, and we're talking about paper money here because that's what we trade in, but just within the past 48 hours, the Federal Reserve has done away with, basically, its lending reserves for banks. And normally this might only apply to Federal Reserve banks, but this applies to all banks. The Federal Reserve has done away with their lending requirements. And when I speak to most people, initially they do not even understand fractional reserves and what the banks were required to keep on hand cash in order to meet their requirements. So you might just want to, if you haven't ever seen the movie, or even if you have, might be a good refresher to think of It's a Wonderful Life, the movie with Jimmy Stewart and, of course, Mr. Potter. This is the way you could think about it. But the minimum reserve requirement for lending institutions, banks, was 10%. So that meant if you had $1,000 in a bank, then on deposit, they could lend out $10,000. And most people are surprised when they first hear that. So where does the $9,000 come from? Well, thin air. That's the Federal Reserve. That's what they can do with money and the money supply. They inflate the money supply. So let me read you from the website, the Federal Reserve website. The Federal Reserve is encouraging banks to use their capital and liquidity buffers as they lend to households and businesses who are affected by the coronavirus. Since the global financial crisis of 2007-2008, U.S. bank holding companies have built up substantial levels of capital and liquidity in excess of regulatory minimums and buffers. Blah, blah, blah. Now, if they have sufficient capital and buffers, why do they need to inject more money? Why do they need to lower the capital lending requirements, the fractional reserve requirements for banks? Reading further, for many years, reserve requirements have played a central role in the implementation of monetary policy by creating a stable demand for reserves. Blah, blah, blah. Here's the key words here. In light of the shift to an ample reserves regime, the board has reduced reserve requirement ratios to 0% effective on March the 26th. So that's 9 days from now, this will go into effect. The beginning of the next reserve maintenance period. This action eliminates reserve requirements for thousands of depository institutions and will help to support lending to households and businesses. So if you want to borrow money, now might be the time. We'll see how that works out in the long run. Typically, banks don't necessarily loosen their belt on lending requirements, only what's lent to them, but we'll see. So while you and I may suffer in the coming months and maybe years, banks will have a blank checkbook, really, with no reconciliation. So we have some other stuff that just came out too. Now this. The Federal Reserve Board announced yesterday, that it will establish a commercial paper funding facility, CPFF, they may relate to it as, to support the flow of credit to households and businesses. Commercial paper markets directly finance a wide range of economic activity, supplementing credit and funding for auto loans and mortgages, as well as liquidity to meet the operational needs of a range of companies. By ensuring the smooth functioning of this market, particularly in times of strain, the Federal Reserve is providing capital that will support families, businesses, and jobs across the economy. So, I don't know. It sounds good, right? They're going to lend money because of the coronavirus, but where does the money come from that the Federal Reserve lends? Have you ever thought about that? Is the Federal Reserve federal? Do they have reserves even? I mean, that's really the question. You can see up here in my left-hand corner is a great book you might want to read, In the Fed by Ron Paul. Also, Audit the Fed was a push by his son, Rand Paul. There's no accountability for the Federal Reserve. So the fact that they're lending money that they don't have, I don't know if that should be a concern or not. But Austrian economists refer to this as a boom and bust cycle. They can loan money for booms, right? So people can expand their businesses. Maybe in times of need, it will help fund the business. Who knows? But regardless, the money has to come from somewhere. And as of now, the federal government runs about a $23 trillion debt that we have. And that's not including Social Security and Medicare unfunded liabilities, bringing that number to over $120 trillion. So, if you remember 2008, 2009, there was bailouts for the banks. I don't know how many citizens actually received any of that bailout money, or small businesses they were supposed to lend it to, but the banks were definitely bailed out. And the taxpayers, you and I, were left to pay the bills. So we'll see what happens with this. Obviously the president is behind it. And, obviously a lot of businesses and a lot of Americans will need money in this time of crisis. But I just wanted to share with you what's happening, because I haven't really seen a whole lot about it in the news, other than that the Federal Reserve has loosened the belt and will lend $1.5 trillion was the number at the end of last week. Who knows if these new announcements will change that. But one thing is for certain, some people will make money during this crisis. There's always people during times of opportunity that make money. So I'm not saying that anyone has to be greedy, but there will be opportunities out there if you have liquidity, if you have access to capital. So that's the question. Do you have access to capital? Or is your money locked up, as we say sometimes, in a qualified plan that you can't get to until age 60? Perhaps you can loan from the bank. Who knows? But if you need capital and you want your own bailout, there's a way that you can fund your own bailout, that you can use your own personal capital so you can be liquid, so you can have cash flow in times of need, or just in times maybe you want to expand your business, or maybe you want to make major purchases without having to depend on the traditional banking system, without having to qualify for a loan. So if you'd like to learn more about how you can do that, then you can just reach out to me through one of our web pages or this channel. And otherwise, if you have questions or comments about what's going on with the Fed, what's going on with your money, just let me know. And I'd appreciate a thumbs up if you like this video, and be sure to subscribe to our channel and hit the little bell so you'll be notified when I come out with new videos. I'll see you next time to talk about your money.